supposed to have appeared in court to ask for a divorce. A bullet had made her a widow instead. And what had started out as a civil action now involved the police.
Our final separation came about a month ago. I did everything but put his bags in the hall.
You hadn't seen him again until last night?
No. He did phone me several times afterwards, making threats until I finally had to get an unlisted number.
What sort of threats, Mrs. Coleman?
Oh, that he'd never let me get a divorce, that he'd kill me, that kind of incoherent thing. I didn't take him seriously. Tony specialized in histrionics.
You said the gun belonged to your husband. Now, if you didn't take his threats seriously, why did you have it here? Loaded.
I didn't know that it was here. Apparently, Tony forgot it when he moved out, or he brought it with him.
Can't we postpone this till Whitney's had some rest? Herb, I'm almost finished. Miss Coleman, what were your grounds for a divorce?
Tony was involved with other women from the first day of their marriage.
There's a Miss Daniels out here, Lieutenant.
She's my sister. She lives with me.
Bring her in.
Hello, Herb.
Ellie?
What's happened?
Lieutenant Weston, Miss Daniels.
How do you do?
Whitney?
Lieutenant, this young lady got off of the elevator, and she started to run downstairs when she saw me.
That's all then, thanks.
This is my maid, Hilda Mueller.
Why did you run, Miss Mueller?
Well, I'm supposed to use a servant's elevator, sir. I thought the officer was after me because I hadn't.
Where were you last night, Hilda?
Don't you remember, Mrs. Coleman? You gave me the evening off.
That's not true, Hilda.
But
Then where did you go?
to a movie.
All night?
Well, after it was over, I walked around.
You walked around alone?
Yes, sir.
The truth, Hilda, this is a police investigation. Your master had a rendezvous with death last night.
Mr. Tony. Murdered.
It was suicide.
Oh,
Hilda, what makes you think that Tony was murdered?
I don't know. I thought...
Hello? Oh, yes, it's for you, Lieutenant.
Thank you. Weston speaking. Is that all? I see. Thank you very much. Thank you. Well, that'll be all, Miss Coleman. Thank you for your cooperation.
John?
Yeah.
I figured that was the coroner's report. Do you think it was suicide?
Well, Herb, I don't say they're wrong, but they've been wrong before. You know, it's an interesting group up there. You known those sisters long?
About 10 years. I was one of the executors of their father's estate. Lots of money involved. Whitney has control of Ellie's share until she's 25. Ellie's rather irresponsible, has no judgment about money.
Apparently not about men, either. You know, Herb, it just bugs me when one of these pseudo-intellectuals takes a great quote and misquotes it as one of his own.
You know, John, sometimes I wonder how a philosopher like you ever got to be a cop.
Herb, what other job could I get where I would meet such interesting people? Oh, like take that maid Hilda, for instance. You notice how she called Whitney Mrs. Coleman when the husband was...
Mr. Tony? Yeah, I noticed.
Tell me, Herb, what was he like?
Oh, good-looking, athletic, started out to be a bricklayer, studied to be an architect at night school. Might have amounted to something if it hadn't been for his drinking and philandering.
Well, how much of that do you think was Whitney's fault?
Lieutenant, for your clinical information, Tony was quite the ladies' man before their marriage. Now, may I go home? I'm tired.
Sure. Herb! Wait a minute, there is one more thing. Listen, who was Tony involved with after their marriage? Now, you know, unless you tell me, it might have to be brought up at the inquest, and, well, there'll be reporters, and, you know...
If I ever said anything nice about you, I apologize. You're positively Machiavellian.
I know. Occupational disease. Well, was there anything more?
Well, he went out with Hilda once.
Uh-huh. And?
Ellie had quite a crush on him after he and Whitney were married. There were others. Now that I've told you, forget it. Whitney's been through enough. Don't be any harder on her.
Hope I won't have to.
Who was it?
Oh, Willie Yates, small-time con man, specializing in fleecing wealthy women.
Pretty brutal. Do you know who did it?
Oh, we will. He was standing him out there in the corner where the loose bricks are. Car drove in, flattened him against the wall. According to the lab boys, whoever did it was a perfectionist. Repeated the process a couple of times. It was probably a sports car.
How do you know?
Well, the height of the bumper at the point of impact.
I still don't understand what all this has to do with the Coleman case.
Well, maybe nothing at all, Herb. Have a look at that. Look at the number inside. Isn't that Whitney Coleman's unlisted telephone number? Well, it looks like it ran into something pretty solid, Herb. Like maybe a brick wall. Let's go upstairs.
I did not go out last night. My car was parked in the garage, and I left the keys in it, as I always do. Now, what is this all about, Herb?
Go on, Whitney. It's all right to answer the lieutenant's question.
Can you prove that you were home all night, Mrs. Coleman?
I can prove it. We went to bed about 10. I sleep in the same room with Whit.
Well, the conclave of good and evil gathers for the climax. Oh, I saw your car being autopsied in the garage with... Now, what devious plot are the minions of law and order seeking to uncover now?
Mr. Turner, what were you doing in the garage?
Oh, forgive me, Inspector. It's my usual means of entree. Opulent lobbies depress me.
Do you drive?
Well, I possess the knowledge, but unfortunately, the means to put it into practice has always eluded me.
Where were you last night?
Miles and I had a date. But we canceled it. He had a dinner appointment with a famous book publisher who wants to publish his book.
Care to give me the particulars?
Well, to tell you the truth, as the cliché goes, the appointment was postponed, but some friends of mine came over to my place instead, and we had a literary tete-a-tete.
And you didn't invite me?
Miles, I want a list of all the people who were there.
The occupants of my apartment house, Inspector, they all participated. You can ask them. Now, Ellie, darling.
Oh, I don't even want to talk to you.
To incriminate you. If you've got nothing to hide, let's prove it. I'm going to have to ask you to come down to headquarters, Mrs. Coleman. I'm sorry, Mrs. Coleman. I'm going to have to place you under arrest.
Now, why would I hit him with my own car and then park it in my garage and not even clean it off? You're treating me as if I were stupid.
On the contrary, I'm giving you credit for intelligence. It would be much less incriminating to shoot Willie Yates and dispose of the gun, except for the fact that your husband died from a bullet wound. As it stands, the two deaths cannot be connected on the basis of modus operandi.
They could not be connected at all if I hadn't told you about the blackmail.
It isn't quite that simple.
I don't understand it, Herb. You told me that if I had nothing to hide, this would help me.
It will, Whitney. The case is wholly circumstantial. But we can't disprove it unless we work with the police, not against them. Maybe you ought to trust me, Whitney.
Whit had the airplane tickets for our trip in here, and they're gone, too.
There's nothing to cry about.
You work fast.
I picked her up at the bus terminal.
Did she have the airplane tickets with her?
No, she had her clothes, $80 in her purse, where she only took what was hers. That's all I've been able to get out of her so far. Hilda, listen, we're not going to hurt you. You probably had every right to leave. All I want to know is why.
I was afraid he would deport me.
Deport you? What for?
Because I knew Willie Yates.
I see. Hilda, maybe you not only knew Yates, maybe you were his partner in a scheme to blackmail Mrs. Coleman. Is that it?
Blackmail? Oh, no, no.
How well did you know Yates?
Not very well. I was lonesome. He took me out a few times. I met him in a bar, a place called Engage.
NK Club?
NK.
All right, Hilda, sit down. Well, here you are. You know, you could have saved me a lot of legwork. I followed your trail from the bar to the theater and here.
I'm sorry, Lieutenant. I thought that was ground you wanted to cover anyway.
Yes.
Join the party, Inspector. Mr. Maris has been telling us the most fascinating story.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Well, go ahead. Maybe you can fascinate me, too.
I'll try. Now, Willie Yates enters the case. Poor Willie thought he had a good thing. A deal to get $1,000 cash in advance. Of course, Willie had no way of knowing that the $1,000 was buying his death warrant. He didn't find that out until he arrived at his rendezvous.
What did the murderer hope to gain by all this?
I think you know, Ellie. A chance to get control of the family fortune by getting rid of Whitney.
That's a terrible thing to say.
The truth is a terrible thing sometimes, Ellie. You want to finish the story? Ellie mentioned the tickets to you, didn't she? You needed $1,000 to pay off Willie Yates. So you stole the tickets and cashed them in.
I? How magnificently fantastic. Why wouldn't I have kept the 1,000 for myself? And what would I have to gain of trying to get rid of Whitney?
Ellie's share of the family fortune?
That's why you wanted to marry me, isn't it? Funny. And I really believed you loved me.